Hey everybody, it's Geoff Welch, and I am here today with Dan Cumberland, who is a writer and a speaker and a photographer. He's a lot of things. He's quite a guy. But Dan has the crazy idea that our work can be infused with meaning. And where in the world does that come from, Dan? Tell me about that.
That's great. Thanks so much for having me on, and great to connect with you face to face. You know, we emailed a couple times, so it's always great to put a face to a name.
Yeah.
I think the crazy idea of work and meaning comes from, man, I could tell you a lot of different places where it comes from, but the simple answer, if there is one, is that it comes from my own dissatisfaction in doing work that doesn't fit and doesn't suit me. And so asking that question, even personally for myself, what does it look like for me to do something that I feel connected to? Yeah. And that's really where I kind of started playing with that word, meaning. The meaning movement is my site. It was really thinking first about like just what do I feel connected to, what fits, what suits me. Mm-hmm. And so that's where it started from, in my own life. Yeah. And I could tell you more of that story.
Please do.
So I guess I could map this, this theme in my life all the way back to my early years. I'm not going to, spend too long on it because I don't want to bore everyone with my life story. But the short version is that I'm the youngest of two. My brother and I. My brother knew exactly what he wanted to do since he was like 9 or 10. We had an Apple IIe computer, and he taught himself how to program it, and just loved it and decided he wanted to program computers, and it's kind of like fast tracked towards that by my parents. They're like, this is totally like in our alley, right up our alley. My dad's an engineer, my mom's an accountant. My brother's now, years later, fast forwarding, the vice president of a software company, and just doing great and having a lot of fun. And I just never quite fit in some ways. Like I'm creative, I'm relational. Not that my family is not relational, but it just didn't quite fit the mold, the family mold in that way. And so I just think because of that, my parents in some ways just didn't really know what to do with me or how to help me find my own way. Yeah. And so I've spent a lot of years trying to find my own way, and finding myself in a number of different places that just didn't quite fit. And so then asking that question, like, is there a way that I can do something with my day job, with my time, that's more than just to get a paycheck? Because I don't like working just for a paycheck because it feels really empty to me. Sure. And so, once again, I could go into so much detail, but about 5-6 years ago, I made the choice to quit my job and go to grad school to study an interdisciplinary degree that was part psychology and personal formation and part theology and spirituality, and really explore how do we make meaning in general, and then really in my own time, like how do we do that in the realm of work? Really trying to answer that question for myself of like, how do I find my way? How do I do something worth doing? And noticing along the way that like I get really fired up about this. I got a lot of energy about this conversation, and maybe for me it's more than just me finding my way, but me helping other people find their way, which is also a theme that we can come back to, but your best work that you do it for other people, and at the same time it's connected to your own story, to your the own way that you've become who you are. So that's a very long answer to that question, but that's my semi-short response.
so all this searching, all this looking, and I'm assuming I know the answer based on the work you do and the fact that you have a website called The Meaning Movement, but did you decide that we can find meaning in our work? Did you arrive at that destination?
I did, yeah. And I mean, I think you can see it when you look around. You can look at one person, two people who are in the exact same job, one person who's really loving it and another person that's not, and then ask, why is it that one person can be in the, like, two people can be in the same role, and one is having a great time, finds it really fulfilling, feels really connected, feels very much like in their own skin, and the other person, there's a lot of dissonance between who they are and what they're doing. And so even like the question, I feel like, is less about can we, and the bigger question is how can we? Okay. And then we start looking at, so why is it that person A loves it and person B doesn't? Sure. And what is it that person B does love? And what are the ways that you can align those places that you feel connected, you feel rooted, where you feel significance, how can you align that with a paycheck?
Yeah, because those are
Yeah,
important
yeah,
things.
yeah,
We do
totally.
need that paycheck. Yeah.
We do need that paycheck. Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so I wonder then, and maybe this isn't a fair question because there's a lot of different reasons, but if we are, if we're wired for certain things, and their work is worth having meaning involved in,
Hmm.
why do we seem primed to settle for so much less? I mean, why does everybody's working for the weekend resonate
Yeah.
with like almost everyone you meet, right? Like
Man, that's
why?
such a good question. I feel like that's a yeah. I feel like that's like the heart of the issue in so many ways,
Yeah.
uh, and I think it's because when you get to talking about meaning and work, you're talking about the realm of desire,
Mm-hmm.
and what you want, and at a really core level, because the things that are meaningful for you are really connected to your identity. And I think that work at its best is a process of identity formation, of asking you, what is it that you have to say, what's the value that you have to add to the world.
Sure.
And so if you actually want to make that transition from just doing work just to do work to actually making it mean something, it means that you have to risk that you're going to try and fail, and that failure is going to hurt a lot more
Yeah.
because there's a lot more invested in it. And on top of that is the question of like, it's also going to be a lot more difficult for you to find that job that lets you do that work, or whatever it is. And I think of often think about different kinds of jobs. I could draw this whole quadrant of like, if you put meaning on, I'll draw it right here on the screen. We have meaning on this axis here, and then you have your values like this, right?
Yeah.
And so if you put meaning, so on this side is like a really meaningful job. Over here you have a really not meaningful job. And then on this axis you have your like lines with your values, whether that's a paycheck, family time, like all the other values can go there. And then below the line down here would be not in line with your values. So you have over on this quadrant right here. So this is meaningful and not in line with your values. You have a lot of, especially nonprofit work ends up being over here, where people are like, I really want to do this. I want to work for the Peace Corps or whatever. I'm not saying anything about the Peace Corps, but just doing something that is like personally significant or has a really big impact. But then for whatever reason, whether it's they don't get paid much or at all, or just the work environment isn't good, and it can be really confusing because you're like, I believe in what I'm doing, but it's really harmful to me, like personally, like it's driving me crazy, and that's a really caustic place to be. On this side of the quadrant, so you have not meaningful, not in line with your values. That's it's a job you're not going to stay in because there's no reason to stay.
Yeah.
Then the job that we're talking about here, which is not meaningful, but in line with your values in a lot of ways, and especially if that value is a really fat paycheck, it's really hard to say, I'm going to step from that really big paycheck to, over on the other side, a meaningful job that's maybe in line with your values, but not as big of a paycheck or whatever that might be. Yeah. So there's a lot of those kind of things that can really make it difficult to make that transition from, whatever it is that you're doing that's paying the bills, that's caring for your family and all of those other things, to saying, I'm going to actually risk not just like the meaning and the desire that I have to like make a difference, but also like my well-being, my family, like all of these other layers of risk can be a part of the process.
Yeah.
So that's a lot I just threw at you. So
no,
that's not too much.
No, that's good. Well, and I wonder though, sometimes I'm a big believer that I'm afraid of being afraid. And so a lot of times the things I'm not afraid of aren't even really the things that I'm afraid of. I'm just afraid of being afraid of them, and so it's like, I'm going to keep certain things at arm's distance because I don't like the feeling of engaging with the fear, even if that thing isn't really something I should be afraid of. And so when you're talking about the idea of you involve not only your own personal, like if I try this and it doesn't work, this is something very personal about me that failed. Yep. When you combine that with family pressures, the pressure to provide for your family, or the pressure of what your spouse's family is going to think of your ability to take, like all those kind of things. Totally. That's pretty sticky. It gets pretty complicated pretty fast. And I guess that does make sense that we would not just be primed to say, let's go make meaning with our lives.
Totally. Yeah. And it also, like, one of the like assumptions in this conversation is that you have some choice in what you do, which is also, that's a privilege, and
Sure.
We're two white guys talking about these things, which like that's a privilege that we get to talk about those things, and not everyone has that. If you think about the hierarchy of needs, like meaning is if it's on the hierarchy, it's at the top, and so shelter and food and like all those other things have to come first.
Sure.
So that's just more to like that pressure piece.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think about that a lot. As we talked before we started the interview, is I have the luxury of combining a lot of things that I care about with my work as an entrepreneur, and it can be easy to forget what a luxury that is. I have to remind myself that not everybody gets to play in that realm.
Totally.
And so. Okay, so
the flip side of that, if I could just say one more thing about that, because I just said that whole bit about privilege and everything, and I think it's true. The flip side of that is that it's still like a choice, and so it is a luxury that you have that choice, but it's also you made that choice, and that's where I think that a lot of people can write off this conversation, because they're like, well, isn't it so nice that Dan and Geoff get to do stuff that's worthwhile while I have to make ends meet with my family, which like. Meaning and money are always going to be at odds in some way, and you're always striking a balance there. And my my work is about continually asking people to at least just stay in that tension, rather than saying, forget it, let's just take the easy route. Yeah. So it's a luxury, but it's still a luxury that you choose.
Sure.
And so
that's
I just want to also, for anyone listening who's like, well, it's a luxury that they get to do that, I also want to say it doesn't let you off the hook.
Yeah.
So
you still have to make that choice. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So if meaning seems attractive and yet is completely repulsive in how much it seems to cost, is it worth it? I mean, have you arrived at where you feel like you're doing meaningful work and you say, yes, it was worth the cost to kind of be where I am at in terms of finding meaning in the work that I do?
Totally. And I think personally I would say yes, but I would also say that with the caveat of like, I don't feel like I've arrived, like I'm which I don't think you implied that, but like that we're always going to be in process, and that I think that's a part of life. And once again, that like, since work is a place of identity formation, that even me, like finding my way in, how do I help people in this? Like I'm still continuing to find my way into doing more and more work that's meaningful for me. So I can look at what I'm a part of right now and what I've been a part of in the past few years of doing this, and say it's good work, and it's well worth it. And yet I have so far to go, and so much more that I want to, it's like when you have something that you want so bad and you want to live into it like all the way, and yet like you're just barely stepping into it. I know that the trajectory is much longer, and as it always will be for most people pursuing like meaningful work, any sort of meaningful project. That the trajectory, it just takes way longer than you ever want it to. And that's both a gift and a curse. So
indeed. Well, we've talked about this in sort of the context of these are things that, to finding meaning is about finding the work that you are kind of like made to do, the work that you're wired to do, the things that really, where you fit. That's not going to be everybody's experience, at least initially. I mean, there may be quite a transition. Do you have any thoughts about our ability to bring meaning to the work that we do? When we're saying, I don't like the job that I have right now, do we have an opportunity to still bring meaning to that work? And I think of Viktor Frankl's suffering ceases to be suffering when meaning is attached to it. So is there a way that we can bring meaning to the work that we're doing right now as we try to find the work that we really want to do?
Totally. Yeah. And I think that's a great question. And I think the first thing I would say is that is not to think about it as polarities or like a binary of like, you're either doing it or you're not doing it. Because even if you're in a job that you don't love 100%, there's got to be some part of your life that you do love. And whether it's, let's just pick some job, like you're at a call center doing sales, and like you're on the phone all the time every day, and you're like, I don't even like talking to people on the phone, and so it's really hard. But then like on your breaks, you have these really great conversations around the water cooler with your coworkers, and you got this great community. And like they're like, even in that, like if that person, they're not loving the way they're, the majority of what they're doing at their job, but there are some things that they do love at their job. And so what I'm trying to say is that, like, it's not about like just saying this is what I need and my life sucks right now and I just want to get there, but to look at your life right now, both right now as well as your experience leading up to this point, and find where are the places of meaning that you already are experiencing. Because regardless of whether or not you're going to do something that's super meaningful full time, that allows you to know, how can I lean in? Like, would it be better? What if I, instead of having this job, what if I stay with my same company, but shift over this way so that I can be maybe in more of an HR role, or like, some sort of like leaning into like some other capacity. I'm using that same example, that person who loves talking around the water cooler. Like, how could he be in a job that helps him care for his team and helps him like be responsible for the culture of the business or whatever it might be. And so, and I think that's a big part of when, just thinking about finding meaningful work, and that question of how do you go about finding meaningful work. It's about finding those themes of meaning in your life, even in small details like that, but then also in bigger places. Like if you just take a few minutes and like think through your life and look at like, what are the places where you've been a part of making something and doing something that's felt really significant to you, and line all those up. If you come up with like 3 or 4 or 5 of them, and then look at the commonalities between them, and those will be some big clues for you to, even in your current situation, in your current job, like, what are those themes and how can you lean into those where you are right now? And then if you want to think about transitioning to a place that allows you to do more of that kind of work, it gives you a lens through which to filter all the opportunities that are before you and say, okay, this one and this one, those would really help allow me to do that. Because at its core, we use words like calling sometimes, or vocation, or life's work. And all those words I think they're about impact, and they're not about jobs. The job is an opportunity to do that, to make that impact, but it's not that the impact or the meaning itself. And I think it's really important to separate those two things out as well. So you can always make meaning at your job. You might be limited by how much you're allowed to do, and what's in your realm of responsibilities at your job, but there's always some sort of possibility there.
Cool. Well, you have a great ebook. And so I'll make sure to link to that. But where do you want people who want to know more about your work, more about what you're talking about? Where do you want them to go?
Yeah, I'd love to invite them to come on over to themeaningmovement.com. That's this is my blog, and it's a community of people pursuing work and meaning. I write at least once a week there, and I have a couple other spin-off projects that I shouldn't say spin-off. They're very much at the core of the Meaning Movement. But in February, we do this month-long, it's called Fearless February. It's a social project helping people take a personal, meaningful risk over the month of February. So you choose one thing that you want to do that feels significant for you. And then as a community, we go after it and try to make stuff happen. That's fearlessfebruary.com, which we'll be ramping up come February. Until then, it's pretty dormant. So those are just two of the things that I'm up to. But I would love to connect with people there. And you can also hit me up on Twitter at Dan Cumberland.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time, Dan. It's very generous of you to share your time and your insights with us. And I know that people watching this will get a lot out of it.
Thanks so much, Geoff. It's been great to be with you.
All right. Take care, Dan.
Take care.